Hello everyone, I'm Maho Mac. I'm the magic girl of the stars, trying to make a living here on Earth. There are a lot of variables that go into character design, even for just a one-off piece. Personally, I feel like a lot of newer artists forget, and a lot of older artists like me ignore, to do our research beforehand. If this is you, I'd like to go over just 5 reasons it'll help you grow as an artist. Sorry it's so small, this is YouTube, not a peer review essay, or something I'm getting paid for. But the piece I'm using here as an example is a human version of Amaterasu from the video game Okami. I'll probably go back and forth between calling her Ami and Amy, but that's not the point. I'm pretty sure I'm saying it wrong, but that's her little nickname in the game. I'll go ahead and show you some of the older art I've done for her. One of the designs I actually drew, and 2 are just from my middle school tracing phase. So the 2 traced ones are obviously just basic, I tried to draw a cute anime girl, with little thought put into design or placement. The newer one is what I have real issues with. Now if you can't tell by literally everything about me, I'm pretty fucking pale. Like, I was just 17 when I drew it, and I hadn't really heard of anyone talk about appropriation in any other sense than Black and American Indigenous people. So I didn't recognize that it could happen to other cultures, which is, dumb kid of me. But I drew Amy's kimono as my vague idea of what I thought one should look like from memory and from media. Obviously didn't really care to look up what one actually was. So my main goal when redoing this was to actually show respect to these beautiful garments. That's why number 1 is to show consideration from the cultures you are using and taking inspiration from. Obviously this won't count for every drawing you do, but when it matters, it really matters. All art is made through decisions, whether consciously or unconsciously, and I wanted to make sure that I wasn't altering anything unintentionally. Like, sure, there are some things I may change for art reasons, but nothing that's just because I felt like it. My research started with looking at the different formalities and types of kimono. Amy's here is based off the Furisode, which is the highest level of formal kimono for unmarried women. The key tell here is the long dangly sleeves you see. I listened to first-hand accounts of those in the kimono industry and those who wear kimono regularly. 2 of the main people were Let's Ask Shogo and Japan Objects, both here on YouTube. I've linked them and a few of my other resources in the description if you want to check it out and learn for yourself. One thing that really helped me get a feel for the fabric types and thickness of the garment themselves were videos on how they are put on. There are a lot more layers than you would probably guess that go into a kimono. If I were to point out an intentional change, it would be one of the underlayers, the juban, that's beneath the kimono. Most have smooth collars that match the crossover style of the kimono. I saw one singular image of a woman wearing a scalloped juban under her kimonos. Hers still crossed like they should, but I felt like the symmetrical nature of this broke up the composition and suited it, at least for this specific artwork. I also wanted the lining of her kimono to be red, as that was the case for vintage kimonos. Obviously, age changes things, but I wanted to show that she was an older character. However, with the background, the red didn't quite fit, and I felt a more accurate white made it look barren. So I did have to change that just for an artistic sense, but it was not something that would be accurate. On the other hand, I tried very intensely not to change the thick smoothness of the obi, the belt around her. It contributes heavily to the silhouette of a kimono, and was something I completely ignored in the original. Back then, I was thinking about how I wear belts to emphasize my waist and cinch in my clothes, which is not what an obi is designed for. It's kind of the opposite. I specifically did not look into how Amaterasu is actually depicted within Shintoism. From what little I did look into, she seems like a very different person than Ami, and I wanted a clear distinction that I was not making up my own version. The religious figure, this design is only about the game, just my thoughts and feelings about how much I love her. But we rant about that over. My second point, which feels a bit smart-assy when said aloud, but it's to fill gaps in your knowledge. Let me explain a little bit. I once tried to design a historically accurate 1890s evening gown based on Nami from One Piece for a future cosplay. Also, I'm just now on Fishman Island, so please don't spoil things. I'm doing my best to get caught up. I just take a little break. I'll be back. Anyway, I watched a lot of historical sewing videos, and I looked at fashion plates from the time, but when I posted to the historical costuming subreddit, I had missed so many small details that I never would have noticed. The waist seam was too high, meaning the silhouette would be off, and the arm side was too low, meaning my chest could pop out from the sides, and I wouldn't even notice. Both undesirable outcomes, one a bit more than the other. Despite looking at and loving these styles for years, I never did any proper research into it, and those who did could instantly clock it as wrong, which is never what you want someone's first impression of your artwork to be, that it's wrong. This is also a good time to say, if you don't have the time or spoons or energy to do deep research, there are so many people that have and would gush if they were given the chance. Don't be worried about asking for help. They probably are desperate for someone to do so. My third point is it can give you more ideas. We all have our comfort media and styles, things that we're used to. Let's say we were designing a set of characters in a zombie setting. One character is from the outskirts, one character is in a well-protected group, and the last is in a walled-off city. Now, if we wanted them all to be wearing cardigans, how could we easily set them apart? Well, we'd assume the character from the outskirts would probably have a pretty ragged cardigan, so then we could have the next character have a very homemade-looking one. If you know anything about knitwear, you probably assume that it would be crochet, as it's usually faster and would be easier to stash in an emergency. The last character in the city might have a knitted cardigan, as it can be done on a machine and would be faster to leave more time for other tasks. If you went really deep into your research, you could pick different stitches based on their function. The outsider character probably didn't have the ability to stop and make theirs. It's more for fashion than for warmth or durability, so it might use fancier stitches with wide gaps that leave it more vulnerable to the elements. The other two would probably focus on the function of the garment instead. We could have each of these characters for a cardigan in the same color and shape, but they would look completely different just from how they are made. So if we were then only tasked to design one character instead, we have all this information, we can make those informed decisions to best fit our character and their world. We can put all these pieces together to make sure that we're actually picking the right choice for our character. So, reason number 4 is to help understand the physics and motions that go into actions we want to draw. If it's part of the character that they play an instrument, and you get a stock image or a photo shoot of someone playing an instrument as your reference, there's no guarantee that model has any idea how to play that instrument. They're only there to do what the director or the photographer says. A better idea would be to get a video of someone playing the instrument and someone talking about what goes into playing that instrument. The visual reference shows you where things should go, but the speaker tells you about the physicality that goes into it, where the momentum and the air and the weight of the body goes. Also, I don't know if you've seen the video of that Link cosplayer repeatedly trying to draw their sword from a sheath on their back, but sometimes things we see in art commonly aren't physically possible, which is totally fine. Sometimes it's just nice to make a thing that looks cool. However, if you want to make a gritty, realistic historical fantasy, it might not be the choice for you. Plus, if you have any sort of a chest past the makeup, you've probably recognized a prominent issue with the typical archer pose for women without it being pointed out. But unless it's something you're interested in, you might not notice when the pose would actually cause the bow to become unstrung. The most important type of research is thankfully one that is consistently talked about, but maybe not the extent of what you can do with it. References are essentially a type of visual research. Obviously it helps with objects and faces and body types we're not familiar with, but also things we use every day. Sometimes our brains like to give us a shorthand version of things because it's easier to store memories that way, so references are a good way to counteract that. This goes with imaginary creatures as well. If you're drawing a big hulking monster, how does it hold its weight? Tigers, bears, elephants, gorillas are all four-legged creatures that weigh quite a bit, but their center of gravity and how they carry themselves are completely different. Finding a similar gait and finding out why it's like that are brilliant ways to help them come to life. Now, I'm not saying you need to do 5 hours of homework before every drawing. I get it, sometimes just the point of making something is to make it. However, I think at least taking 10 to 30 minutes before you start like a bigger drawing will definitely boost your ability and hopefully help you to make more art that consistently makes you happy. I genuinely enjoy my art, but this is one I can honestly say that I'm proud of. It's something that I didn't know I could do beforehand. It makes me sad that when I was recording this that there's chunks that got cut out because I tried to do something different with how I recorded it. I tried to pause anytime I went to another screen, but when I came back, I forgot to unpause multiple times, and I miss that I don't have that footage because I am proud of this. I did a good job. That's really all I have to say on that sort of things. If you know Okami at all, you know that the sequel was just announced, and that's crazy. This is something that I grew up with. I watched my older sibling play it. I bought it and sold it 100 times over on the Wii because I would play it over and over, and then I'd get sick of it and I'd be like, well, I can sell it to GameStop, I can get a new game. And then I would miss it, and I would come back and I would buy it for way more than I ever should have, repeatedly. I currently own it on the Switch, and I would do it again. I love this game and I want to do something. And I did do something that makes it feel like you can tell, like you can see it. And I think that's kind of the point of a lot of art, is you want to be able to feel the emotions behind it. Whether it's the emotions that are specifically there in the drawing or the emotions of the artist that they're getting through. And I think doing the research shows that. Thank you so much for talking with me on this speed paint. As per the site we're on, you can always like and subscribe if you so choose. My commissions are open on my Ko-fi linked below, and I have an Etsy where I make custom Switch skins. I was a little bummed out, I'm not gonna lie, when the Switch 2 was announced, but I'm still excited. I'll make one for those whenever, I can actually get my hands on one. But I hope you have an amazing day, and don't forget to shine for the stars.